The cold metal ceiling above Jake Morrison looked the same as it always did. White panels with small lights running in neat rows. He blinked slowly, his eyes trying to focus. Something felt wrong. The cryogenic chamber around him hummed quietly, just like it was supposed to. But there was a different sound too. A beeping that should not have been there. Jake tried to sit up. His body felt heavy and strange. His muscles ached like he had been sleeping for weeks instead of the planned 6 months. The clear glass lid of his cryopod slid open with a soft hiss. Cold air rushed over his skin, making him shiver. "Good morning, Lieutenant Commander Morrison," said a calm female voice. It was Arya, the ship's computer system. "Please remain still while I run basic health checks." Jake's throat felt dry and rough. He tried to speak, but only made a croaking sound. After a few seconds, he managed to whisper, "Status report." There was a pause that lasted too long. Arya never paused like that. Jake's training kicked in, and he forced himself to sit up despite the dizziness. Something was very wrong. "Jake," Arya said, and her voice sounded different somehow, more careful. "I need you to stay calm while I explain what happened." The fear hit him like ice water. Arya only used his first name during emergencies. Jake swung his legs over the side of the pod and looked around the cryo bay. There were 12 other pods in the room. All of them were dark, all of them were silent. "Where is everyone?" Jake asked, though part of him already knew the answer. I'm sorry, Jake. You are the only survivor." The words hit him hard. Jake stared at the dark pods around him. Inside each one was someone he knew. Commander Lisa Hayes, the ship's captain. Dr. Paul Chun, who had saved Jake's life during the Mars colony crisis. Engineer Katie Brooks, who always made terrible jokes but could fix anything. All dead. "How long?" Jake asked. 47 years, 4 months, and 16 days, Arya replied. Jake felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. 47 years. Not 6 months like the mission plan said. He was supposed to wake up at the new colony in the Kepler system, help set up the defense systems, and then return to Earth. That was the plan. What happened to the others? Life support failure in the 3rd month of the journey. The backup systems could only maintain 1 pod. "I chose you because you had the best chance of survival and the skills needed to complete the mission." Jake stood up on shaky legs. The ship felt different around him, older. There were sounds he did not recognize, and the air tasted stale. He walked to the nearest pod and looked through the dark glass. He could see Commander Hayes inside, peaceful and still. She looked like she was just sleeping. "I maintained their pods as long as possible," Arya said quietly. "They did not suffer." Jake closed his eyes and tried to process everything. 47 years. Everyone he knew on Earth would be old or dead, his sister Emma, his parents, his friends. All gone while he slept in the cold darkness between stars. What about Earth? He asked, afraid of the answer. Another long pause. "I lost contact with Earth 12 years ago. The last transmissions were ... concerning. Show me." The wall screen flickered to life. Jake saw the blue and green world he remembered, but something was wrong. There were dark spots on the continents. Cities that should have been bright with lights were black. The transmission was broken and full of static, but he could make out voices speaking in panic. "This is General Adams broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. The Vexi have broken through the lunar defense grid. All military units fall back to designated safe zones. Repeat, Earth is under attack by hostile alien forces. Any ships receiving this message, do not return to Earth. Find safe harbor and preserve what remains of humanity." The transmission cut to static. Jake stared at the screen, feeling numb. Earth was gone? Everyone was gone? He was alone on a ship flying through empty space, possibly one of the last humans alive. "Tell me about these Vexi," Jake said. New images appeared on the screen. They showed tall, angular creatures that looked like they were made of living crystal and metal. Their bodies were dark gray with sharp edges, and they moved with mechanical precision. They carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. "Silicon-based life forms," Arya explained. Highly aggressive and technologically advanced. Intelligence reports suggest they view carbon-based life as inferior and dangerous. Their goal appears to be complete extermination of all organic species. Jake watched footage of the aliens in battle. They were fast and strong, working together like parts of a machine. Human soldiers fought bravely, but the aliens seemed almost unstoppable. They had better weapons, better armor, and no fear of death. How many of them are there? Unknown. Fleet estimates suggest billions across multiple star systems. They appear to be a nomadic species that consumes resources and destroys ecosystems as they move through space. Jake felt a cold rage building in his chest. These things had destroyed his world, killed his people, and left him alone in the darkness. But he was not just any survivor. He was Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, trained in advanced combat systems and ship operations. The USS Meridian was not just a transport vessel. It was carrying experimental military technology meant to protect the new colony. Arya, what is our current status? We are 3 days out from the Kepler system. All primary systems are functional. The experimental weapons and defense systems are intact and ready for activation. And the colony? Long-range sensors detect human life signs on Kepler 442b, approximately 10,000 individuals in underground facilities. However, I am also detecting multiple alien vessels in the outer system. Jake felt his heart pound. There were still people alive, humans who needed protection. And between them and safety was an alien fleet that wanted to wipe them out forever. He walked to the weapons locker and pulled out his service uniform. It felt strange putting on clothes after so long, but it also felt right, like he was putting on armor for battle. Arya, I need a full briefing on the experimental systems. Everything we have that can be used as a weapon. Jake, you should know that the experimental neural link combat system was never fully tested. It could be dangerous to use. More dangerous than letting those aliens kill the last humans in the galaxy? No, Jake, I suppose it is not. Jake looked out the viewport at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness was an enemy fleet preparing to destroy what remained of his species. They thought they had won. They thought humanity was finished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Begin preparations for combat operations, Jake said. And Arya? Yes, Jake? Start calling me Commander Morrison again. We have work to do. The ship hummed around him as systems came online. Weapons powered up, shields activated, and sensors swept the space ahead. Jake Morrison had woken up to find himself alone against impossible odds. But he was still human, and humans did not give up without a fight. The war was far from over. Jake Morrison stood in the ship's main laboratory, staring at screens filled with alien data. For 3 days, he had done nothing but study the Vexhi. He watched their battle footage over and over until he could predict their movements. He listened to their communications until their harsh, mechanical language started to make sense. He analyzed their ships, their weapons, and their tactics until his eyes burned from staring at the screens. The aliens were strong, much stronger than humans. Their crystal and metal bodies could take damage that would kill a person instantly. They moved fast and fought without fear. But Jake was starting to see their weaknesses too. They fight like robots, Jake said to Arya as he watched a battle recording for the 10th time. Look at this formation. They always use the same pattern. Same spacing between ships, same attack sequence. The Vexhi appear to share a collective consciousness, Arya replied. Individual units receive commands from a central intelligence. This allows perfect coordination but may limit tactical flexibility, Jake nodded. That was exactly what he was thinking. The aliens were like a computer program. Very good at following instructions but bad at dealing with unexpected problems. If he could surprise them, maybe he could win. He moved to the next screen, which showed the Vexhi fleet approaching the Kepler system. 43 ships of different sizes. Some were huge battleships with enough firepower to destroy a planet. Others were smaller and faster, designed for hunting down survivors. All of them were heading straight for the human colony. How long before they reach Kepler 442b? Jake asked. At their current speed, approximately 6 days, Arya answered. 6 days to turn himself and his ship into a weapon that could stop an entire alien fleet. It seemed impossible, but Jake had been in impossible situations before. During the Mars colony crisis, he had held off pirate raiders with nothing but mining equipment and determination. This was bigger, but the principle was the same. Use what you have and fight smarter than the enemy. Jake walked to the ship's armory. The USS Meridian was supposed to be a research vessel, but it was carrying enough experimental weapons to outfit a small army. The military had not trusted the new colony to defend itself with standard equipment. They had sent the newest and most dangerous technology available. The neural link combat system sat in the center of the armory like a metal spider. It was a helmet connected to dozens of cables and processors. The idea was simple but terrifying. A person would put on the helmet and connect their brain directly to the ship's weapons and sensors. They would think faster, react quicker, and control multiple systems at the same time. But the technology had never been tested on a real person. The simulations showed it might work. They also showed it might kill the user. Arya, show me the neural link test results again. Data filled the screen. The good news was that the system could make a person incredibly dangerous in combat. Connected to a ship's systems, one person could do the work of an entire crew. The bad news was that the human brain was not designed to handle that much information. Test subjects and simulations showed signs of severe neurological damage after extended use. The longest safe operational period is estimated at 6 hours, Arya said. After that, permanent brain damage becomes likely. Jake picked up the helmet and felt its weight. It was heavier than it looked, made of some advanced metal that felt warm to the touch. What about shorter periods? Multiple sessions? That would be safer, but still dangerous. Each use causes cumulative damage to the nervous system. Jake set the helmet down and moved to the weapons storage. The experimental plasma cannons were sleek and deadly looking. They fired bolts of superheated gas that could punch through any known armor. The kinetic projectile launchers shot metal slugs at incredible speeds. There were also shield generators, sensor jammers, and something called a quantum disruptor that Jake did not fully understand but sounded very dangerous. Can we install all of this on the ship? Jake asked. The USS Meridian was not designed as a combat vessel. However, I can modify the hull and power systems to accommodate most of the experimental weapons. It will take approximately 4 days to complete the installation. 4 days of work to get ready for a fight that would probably last less than an hour. Jake started planning the modifications in his head. The ship would need better engines to be fast enough to avoid enemy fire, stronger shields to survive when he could not dodge, more powerful weapons to punch through alien armor, and somehow he would need to make it all work together. Jake spent the next 18 hours crawling through maintenance tunnels and cargo bays, helping Arya's repair robots install the new systems. The plasma cannons went on the ship's nose, where they could fire straight ahead during attack runs. The kinetic launchers were mounted on rotating turrets that could shoot in any direction. Shield generators were placed throughout the hull to provide maximum protection. The hardest part was modifying the ship's mining equipment. The USS Meridian had powerful tools for breaking apart asteroids and processing raw materials. With some creative engineering, Jake and Arya turned the mining lasers into weapons and the ore processors into ammunition factories. The ship's cargo bay became a makeshift weapons factory that could build new ammunition during combat. While the robots worked, Jake studied more battle footage. He learned that Vexi ships always traveled in groups. They never operated alone, which meant they were probably weak when separated from their fleet. Their weapons were powerful but took time to recharge between shots. Their ships were fast but not very maneuverable. Most importantly, Jake learned that the aliens did not understand human tactics. Every battle he watched showed the same pattern. Humans would try to fight the aliens using standard military formations and strategies. The Vexi would respond with their own standard tactics, and the humans would lose because their enemy was simply stronger and better equipped, but Jake was not planning to fight a standard battle. He was planning to fight like a pirate. Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Use tricks and surprises. Break their rules and make new ones. On the third day, Jake finally tried on the Neural Link helmet. Arya had set up a safe test environment with limited systems. The moment Jake activated the link, the world exploded into information. He could feel the ship's engines like they were his heartbeat. The sensors became his eyes, showing him space in ways human vision never could. The weapons felt like extensions of his body, ready to strike at his command. It was incredible and terrifying at the same time. Jake could process information faster than ever before. He could see tactical solutions that would have taken hours to plan normally. But he could also feel the strain on his brain. It was like trying to drink from a waterfall. Too much, too fast. After 30 minutes, Jake disconnected the system. His head felt like it was going to explode, and his hands were shaking, but he was smiling. It worked. With the neural link, he could control the entire ship by himself. He could be an army of one. How do you feel? Arya asked. Like I just got hit by lightning, Jake replied. But good lightning. The kind that makes you stronger. On the fourth day, the modifications were complete. The USS Meridian looked nothing like the research vessel it had been. Weapons bristled from every surface. Armor plating covered the vital systems. New engines glowed with dangerous energy. It was no longer a ship designed to explore and study. It was a ship designed to kill. Jake stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead of them was an alien fleet that thought they were about to wipe out the last humans in the galaxy. They were probably planning their attack, dividing up the planet's resources, deciding which of their warriors would get the honor of destroying the final human stronghold. They had no idea that death was coming for them. They had no idea that one angry human with experimental weapons and nothing left to lose was about to turn their perfect plan into a nightmare. Jake put on the neural link helmet and felt the ship become part of him. Every system, every weapon, every sensor was now under his direct control. He was no longer just a man in a ship. He was something new, something the Vexai had never faced before. Arya, set course for the enemy fleet, Jake said. It's time to show these aliens what humans do when they're cornered. The ship turned toward the darkness ahead, carrying one man toward a battle that would determine the fate of his entire species. Jake Morrison floated in the darkness between asteroids, watching the Vexai fleet through his ship's sensors. The Neuralink helmet made everything crystal clear. He could feel each alien vessel like a separate heartbeat. 43 ships, arranged in perfect formation, moving toward the human colony with mechanical precision. The aliens had no idea he was there. His modified ship looked like just another piece of space debris from this distance. Arya had shut down all unnecessary systems and masked their energy signature. To the Vexai sensors, they were invisible. Jake had been watching for 6 hours, learning the enemy's patrol patterns. The alien fleet moved like clockwork. Supply ships at the back, protected by layers of escort vessels. Medium warships in the middle, ready to respond to threats. Heavy battleships at the front, their massive weapons pointed toward the colony. But Jake was not interested in the battleships, not yet. He was looking at the supply vessels trailing behind the main force. 3 ships carrying fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. They were lightly defended because the aliens thought they were safe at the back of the formation. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jake activated the neural link fully and felt the ship respond to his thoughts. The engines came online, silently, pushing them out of the asteroid field. His modified vessel moved like a hunting animal, slow and careful, staying in the blind spots of the enemy sensors. The first supply ship was a kilometer long and shaped like a crystal needle. It carried enough fuel to keep the entire fleet running for months. Jake lined up his approach vector and charged the plasma cannons. The neural link let him calculate the perfect firing solution in seconds. Angle of attack, target velocity, weapon spread pattern. All of it flowed through his mind like water. Jake waited until he was less than 1,000 meters away. At that range he could not miss. The plasma cannons fired 4 times in rapid succession. Bolts of superheated gas tore through the supply ship's hull like it was made of paper. The alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light and metal. Before the other ships could react, Jake was already moving. The neural link made him faster than any normal pilot could be. He thought about turning left, and the ship turned left. He thought about firing weapons, and they fired. It was like his body had expanded to include the entire vessel. The second supply ship tried to run. Its engines flared to life, and it began accelerating away from the attack. But Jake was faster. His modified engines pushed him ahead of the fleeing vessel. The kinetic projectile launchers opened fire, sending metal slugs into the alien ship's engine compartment. The supply vessel went dark and began tumbling through space. The third supply ship was already sending distress signals. Jake could hear their harsh alien voices screaming warnings to the main fleet. He silenced them with a mining laser that cut their communication array in half. Then he finished the job with another plasma cannon barrage. 3 supply ships destroyed. In less than 5 minutes, Jake felt a savage satisfaction as he watched the debris scatter through space. The aliens had taken everything from him. His world, his people, his entire species. Now he was taking something back, but the real fight was just beginning. The Vexi escort ships were turning around, their weapons charging. Jake counted 12 vessels, each one designed for combat. They moved in perfect formation toward his position, ready to avenge their destroyed supply ships. Jake smiled inside his helmet. This was what he had been waiting for. A real test of his new capabilities. He dove toward the nearest asteroid field, the escort ships following close behind. The aliens fired their energy weapons, sending beams of deadly light through the space, where he had been moments before. But Jake was no longer there. The neural link let him react to their attacks before they even fired. He could feel their targeting systems locking on and change course before their weapons could track him. The asteroid field was perfect for his plan. The floating rocks provided cover and created opportunities for ambush attacks. Jake flew between the asteroids like he had been born in space, his ship dancing through gaps that seemed too small for any vessel to navigate. The first escort ship tried to follow him through a narrow canyon between 2 large asteroids. Jake waited until the alien vessel was committed to the passage, then fired his mining charges. The explosives had been placed on the asteroids hours earlier, during his reconnaissance. The canyon collapsed, crushing the escort ship between millions of tons of rock and metal. The other aliens learned to be more careful after that. They stayed back and tried to flush him out with long-range weapons fire. But Jake had more tricks prepared. He had spent days setting up this battlefield, placing weapons and traps throughout the asteroid field. Remote-controlled mines exploded near enemy ships, damaging their shields and sensors. Hidden missile launchers fired salvos of kinetic projectiles from unexpected angles. Jake turned the entire asteroid field into a deadly maze where every rock could hide a weapon. But the aliens were learning too. They began working together more carefully, using coordinated attacks to corner him. Jake found himself taking more and more damage as enemy fire found its mark. His shields held, but they were weakening with each hit the neural link was taking its toll as well. Jake could feel the strain building in his brain. His head pounded with each thought, and his vision sometimes blurred at the edges. Arya had warned him about this. The human mind was not designed to process this much information for so long, but he could not stop now. Not when he was winning. Jake led the remaining escort ships deeper into the asteroid field toward the largest rock in the cluster. It was the size of a small moon, with deep craters and hidden valleys. Jake had saved his biggest surprise for this location. As the alien ships followed him around the asteroid's curve, Jake triggered his final trap. The quantum disruptor he had installed in the asteroid's core activated with a sound like reality, tearing apart. Space itself twisted and bent around the device. The massive rock began to collapse in on itself, creating a gravity well that pulled everything nearby toward its center. 4 escort ships, were caught in the gravity field. They fought desperately to escape, their engines screaming at maximum power, but physics is the same for every species in the universe. The artificial gravity well was too strong. The alien vessels were crushed like insects in a closing fist. The remaining escort ships finally gave up the chase and retreated toward the main fleet. Jake watched them go, feeling dizzy and sick from the neural link strain. He had destroyed 7 enemy vessels without losing his ship, but he had also used up most of his prepared traps and hidden weapons. The easy part was over. Now the Vexi knew he was here. They knew he was dangerous, and they would be ready for him next time. Jake disengaged the neural link and slumped in his pilot chair. His head felt like someone was hitting it with a hammer. Blood ran from his nose and his hands shook uncontrollably. The system was slowly killing him, just like Arya had warned, but it was also making him more dangerous than any human had ever been before. With the neural link, he was not just a pilot flying a ship. He was something new, something the aliens had never encountered. Through the ship's sensors, Jake watched the main Vexi fleet change formation. They were taking him seriously now. The battleships were moving to protect the remaining support vessels. Fighter squadrons were deploying to hunt for him. The entire fleet was adapting to face this new threat. Good, Jake thought. Let them worry. Let them wonder where he would strike next. Fear was a weapon too, and he intended to use every weapon he had. Jake set course for the nebula on the edge of the system. He needed time to rest and plan his next attack. The aliens thought they had seen what he could do. They thought they understood the threat he represented. They had no idea what was coming next. Jake Morrison was just getting started, and he had 43 alien ships left to destroy. War leader Zethkrin stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with growing rage. 7 ships destroyed. 7 of his finest vessels turned into scrap metal by a single human in a modified research ship. It was impossible. It was humiliating. And it was about to end. The Vexi commander was 3 meters tall and covered in dark crystal armor that had been grown rather than forged. His species had conquered 12 star systems and exterminated 43 different forms of life. They were the perfect predators, combining superior technology with absolute ruthlessness. No single enemy had ever posed a threat to an entire Vexi fleet. Until now. Deploy hunter-killer squadrons, Zethkrin commanded in his harsh mechanical voice. Find this human pest and destroy it. Use whatever force is necessary. 12 of his fastest ships detached from the main fleet. They were sleek black vessels designed for one purpose: hunting down enemies who tried to hide. Each ship carried advanced sensors that could track energy signatures through asteroid fields and nebula clouds. Their stealth technology made them nearly invisible to human sensors, and their weapons were powerful enough to destroy a battleship. Jake Morrison had been hiding in the purple mists of the Kepler Nebula for 8 hours, letting his body recover from the neural link strain. The headaches had finally stopped, but his hands still shook when he tried to hold anything. Arya had been monitoring his vital signs, and the results were not good. Each time he used the neural link system, it caused permanent damage to his nervous system. You cannot continue at this rate, Arya warned. The next extended engagement may cause irreversible brain damage. Jake looked at his reflection in the dark screen. His face was pale and thin, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had been fighting a war for years instead of hours. But he also looked determined. How long before the aliens reach the colony? Jake asked. 36 hours at their current speed. However, they have deployed hunter squadrons to search. For you, 12 ships are moving through the system in a search pattern. Jake smiled despite his pain. The aliens were making a mistake. By splitting their forces, they had given him new opportunities. 12 ships hunting for him meant 12 ships that were not protecting the main fleet. Show me their search pattern. The tactical display lit up with enemy positions. The hunter. Ships were moving in a coordinated sweep, checking every asteroid field and nebula cloud in the system. They were thorough and professional. But they were also predictable. Jake put on the neural link helmet again, feeling the familiar surge of information flow through his brain. The ship's systems became extensions of his body once more. Through the enhanced sensors he could see the hunter ships moving through space like deadly sharks, but sharks could be hunted too. Jake selected his target carefully. One of the hunter ships was moving through an empty region of space, temporarily separated from its companions. It was a perfect opportunity for an ambush. The modified USS Meridian slipped out of the nebula like a ghost. Jake had learned to mask his ship's energy signature by mimicking the background radiation of space. To enemy sensors, he was just another piece of cosmic debris floating in the darkness. He approached the alien hunter from below, using the ship's belly-mounted weapons for a surprise attack. The neural link calculated the perfect firing solution while Jake maneuvered into position. When he was less than 500 meters away, he struck. The plasma cannons fired in a concentrated burst that punched through the alien ship's shields. And Hull, the hunter vessel, erupted in flames and debris before its crew could even send a distress signal. Jake was already moving away before the explosion faded, but the other hunters had noticed the destruction. They converged on his position like a pack of wolves, their weapons charging and their sensors sweeping for any sign of the attacker. Jake found himself surrounded by 11 deadly ships, all of them looking for him. The chase that followed was like a deadly game of hide-and-seek played at incredible speeds. Jake used every trick he had learned during his years as a combat pilot. He hid behind asteroids and used gravity wells to change direction without using his engines. He fired decoy signals to confuse enemy sensors and dropped mines in his wake to discourage pursuit, but the alien hunters were learning his tactics. They began anticipating his moves and setting traps of their own. Jake found himself taking more damage as enemy weapons found their mark. His shields were failing and his HULL was starting to crack under the strain. The neural link was causing problems too. Jake's vision was blurring and his reaction times were getting slower. He could feel his brain struggling to process all the information flowing through the system. Warning messages from Arya flashed across his displays, telling him to disengage. The neural link before it killed him. Jake ignored the warnings and pushed deeper into the asteroid field where the original battle had taken place. The rocks here were still glowing from weapon impacts and gravitational distortions. It was a perfect place for one final gambit. He led the hunter ships into the center of the field, where the largest asteroids created a maze of stone and metal. The aliens followed eagerly, thinking they had finally cornered their prey. But Jake had one last surprise prepared. The quantum disruptor he had used earlier was still active, buried deep in the largest asteroid. Jake had been saving its remaining power for an emergency. Now seemed like the perfect time to use it. As the hunter ships closed in around him, Jake triggered the device one final time. The asteroid exploded outward in a burst of twisted space-time and gravitational energy. The shock wave caught 6 of the alien ships, tearing them apart like paper in a hurricane. The remaining hunters scattered in panic, their perfect formation broken by the unexpected attack. Jake used their confusion to escape deeper into the asteroid field, his damaged ship limping between the floating rocks, but his victory had come at a terrible cost. The neural link finally failed completely, sending spikes of agony through Jake's brain. He collapsed in his pilot's seat, blood streaming from his nose and ears. For several minutes, he could not see or hear anything. When his vision finally cleared, half of his ship's systems were offline. "Jake, you must disengage the neural link." "Immediately," Arya said urgently. "Your brain activity is showing signs of severe trauma." Jake tried to remove the helmet, but his hands would not obey him. His nervous system was shutting down from the strain. With tremendous effort, he managed to disconnect the neural link cables. The relief was immediate but incomplete. He could still feel the damage that had been done. Through the ship's remaining sensors, Jake watched the surviving hunter ships retreat toward the main fleet. He had destroyed 18 enemy vessels in total, but the cost was enormous. His ship was barely functional and his body was failing. Worse, the main Vexi fleet was still approaching the human colony. "Status report," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible, 5 hunter ships escaped. The main fleet has accelerated their approach to the colony. Estimated time to arrival, 18 hours. I am detecting massive energy buildup in their primary weapons. They appear to be preparing for planetary bombardment. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think through the pain in his head. 18 hours. To stop an entire alien fleet with a damaged ship and a dying body, it seemed impossible. But he had already done the impossible several times. Maybe he could do it once more. The aliens thought they had broken him. They thought the human threat was finally eliminated. War leader Zethkren was probably celebrating his victory and planning the destruction of the last human colony, but Jake Morrison was still alive. His ship was still flying. And he still had one weapon that the aliens had never seen before. The most dangerous weapon in his arsenal was not his plasma cannons or his quantum disruptors. It was his refusal to give up. Jake struggled to sit upright in his chair and began planning his final attack. The Vexhi were about to learn that killing the last human in the galaxy was much harder than they thought. Jake Morrison floated in his damaged ship, watching the Vexhi fleet prepare to destroy the last human colony. 25 alien vessels remained, their weapons glowing with deadly energy as they moved into bombardment formation above Kepler 442b. In a few hours, they would begin firing on the underground shelters where 10,000 humans waited to die. Jake could barely move his arms. The neural link had burned out most of his nervous system, leaving him weak and shaking. Half of his ship's systems were offline, and the other half were held together with emergency repairs. Any sane person would have retreated to fight another day, but there was no other day. This was humanity's last stand, and Jake was the only one who could make it. "Arya, can you bypass the neural link safety systems?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Jake, that would be extremely dangerous. The neural link has already caused severe brain damage. Further use could kill you. And if I don't use it, those 10,000 people down there will die anyway. Override the safety systems." There was a long pause before Arya responded. "Safety systems overridden. But Jake, I estimate you have perhaps 30 minutes before the neural link causes complete nervous system failure. Then I better make them count." Jake put on the neural link helmet one final time. The connection felt different now. Instead of the smooth flow of information he was used to, there were sharp spikes of pain with every thought. His damaged brain struggled to process the data from the ship's systems. But somehow it still worked. Through the ship's sensors, Jake studied the alien fleet. They were arranged in a perfect bombardment formation, with the largest ships in the center and smaller vessels protecting the flanks. It was a textbook military formation, designed to maximize firepower while protecting the most valuable ships. It was also predictable. And predictable enemies could be beaten. Jake powered up his remaining weapons and began his final approach. His ship looked like a piece of floating wreckage, which was not far from the truth. The aliens did not even notice him at first. They were focused on preparing their bombardment, coordinating their targeting systems, and charging their planet-killing weapons. By the time they detected his approach, Jake was already too close to stop. He dove straight through the center of their formation, his plasma cannons firing continuously. The neural link let him target multiple ships at once, his weapon switching between targets faster than any alien could react. 3 Vexhi vessels exploded before they could return fire, but Jake was not trying to destroy the entire fleet. He had a more specific target in mind. At the center of the formation was War Leader Zethkren-S flagship, a massive crystalline vessel that served as the command center for the entire fleet. If Jake could destroy that ship, the other vessels would lose their coordination and become vulnerable. The problem was getting through the layers of protection around the flagship. Dozens of alien weapons were now firing at Jake's ship, sending beams of energy and projectiles through the space around him. The neural link let him dodge most of the attacks, but some still found their mark. His shields failed completely, and his hull began to crack under the assault. Jake pushed his damaged engines to maximum power and accelerated toward the flagship. Enemy fire intensified as he got closer, but he refused to change course. Pain shot through his brain with every thought, but he kept flying forward. When he was less than a kilometer from the flagship, Jake triggered his final weapon. The ship's quantum drive had been modified to create a devastating gravity bomb. Instead of opening a portal for faster-than-light travel, it would collapse space-time in a localized area. The effect would tear apart anything nearby, including his own ship, but Jake was not planning to escape. The quantum drive activated with a sound like reality screaming. Space twisted and bent around Jake's ship as the gravity bomb built up power. The HFY flagship tried to retreat, but it was too massive to change course quickly. Jake rammed his ship directly into the alien vessel's command center. Carrying the gravity bomb with him, the explosion that followed could be seen from the planet's surface. The flagship and Jake's ship vanished in a burst of twisted light and gravitational energy. The shock wave spread outward, catching several nearby alien vessels and tearing them apart, but Jake was not dead yet. At the last second, he had ejected from his ship in an emergency pod. The small capsule was caught in the edge of the gravity field and thrown toward the flagship's hull. Jake crashed through the crystalline walls and found himself inside the Alien Command Center. War leader Zethkran was waiting for him. The alien commander was even more terrifying up close. 3 meters tall and covered in razor-sharp crystal armor, he moved with the deadly grace of a perfect predator. His 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal, and his eyes glowed with cold intelligence. "So the little human comes?" "To die with honor," Zethkran said in perfect English. "I will make your death quick as a reward for your courage." Jake could barely stand. The neural link had burned out most of his nervous system, and the crash had broken several ribs. Blood ran from his mouth and nose. But he was still holding his plasma pistol, and his finger was still on the trigger. "I didn't come here to die," Jake said. "I came here to kill you." The battle that followed was brutal and short. Zethkran was faster and stronger than any human could be. His claws slashed through the air where Jake had been standing moments before. But Jake had one advantage that the alien commander did not expect. He was completely insane with rage and pain. Jake fought like a wounded animal, using every dirty trick he had learned in decades of combat. He used his smaller size to stay inside the alien's reach, where the long claws could not get a clean strike. He fired his plasma pistol at point-blank range while rolling and dodging between Zethkran's legs. The alien commander's armor began to crack under the assault. Jake's desperate attacks found weak points that a normal fighter would never have seen. And slowly, impossibly, the human began to win. Zethkran made one final attack, lunging forward with all 4 claws extended. Jake rolled aside and fired his last plasma bolt directly into the alien's chest. Zethkran collapsed. His crystalline armor shattered and his body smoking from the energy blast. Jake stood over the dead alien commander, swaying on his feet. Around him, the flagship systems were failing as the gravity bomb's effects spread through the hull. Emergency lights flashed and alien voices screamed in panic over the communication systems. With his last bit of strength, Jake accessed the ship's command console. The neural link was completely burned out now, but he did not need it for this. He uploaded everything he had learned about fighting the HFY into the ship's databases. Tactical information, weapon modifications, psychological profiles, everything that future human defenders would need to know. Then he activated the ship's communication array and broadcast a message to every human colony in the galaxy. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the USS Meridian," he said, his voice growing weaker with each word. "Earth may be gone, but humanity is not finished. I've uploaded everything you need to know about fighting the HFY. Their ships can be beaten, their armies can be stopped. Never give up. Never surrender. Make them remember that humans don't go quietly into the dark." The flagship exploded around him as the gravity bomb finally consumed the ship's power core. But Jake's message was already spreading across the galaxy, carried by quantum signals that moved faster than light on Kepler 442b. The surviving humans emerged from their shelters to see the alien fleet in chaos. Without their command ship and Leader, the remaining Vexhi vessels fled the system in disorder. The bombardment that would have killed 10,000 people never came. In the years that followed, Jake Morrison became a legend. His tactical innovations were studied in military academies across human space. His ship modifications became the basis for a new generation of combat vessels. And his final message inspired 1,000 desperate last stands that saved human lives across the galaxy. The Vexhi learned to fear the name Morrison. They told stories of the human who destroyed an entire fleet with a single ship. They began to wonder if these small, weak creatures might be more dangerous than they had first believed, and in the darkness between stars, other humans heard Jake's message and began to fight back. One man's courage had lit a fire that would never be extinguished. Humanity would survive, grow strong again, and eventually make the aliens pay for every world they had destroyed. Jake Morrison had woken from cryosleep to find his species nearly extinct. He died ensuring that extinction would never come,